Okay, I'm now going to show you how to import data into R. And you can import data from any one of a number of sources. You can get it from published papers, from textbooks, from websites. As long as you're citing data, you can really, there's lots of different places, like I said. And as an example, I'm going to go to the USGS surface water site, and I wanted to use dissolved oxygen levels in streams because that's a good parameter that we can demonstrate some of our graphical capabilities. So I went and looked for California dissolved oxygen records, and there's 5 here on the Russian River. So I just selected those, and I just said save it as a tab separated data file the last 5 years. So I'm going to type submit here, right? And then we're waiting for the USGS site, and eventually it's going to download this file. Just going to call it DV here. I have it set up to appear on my desktop. So that's the data that we want to import, but it's not in the right format for R. The default for R is to have the top row give you the names of all the columns, and then the data starts with column 2. And I found actually one of the easiest ways to format these files is to use Excel. So I'm going to open up this file that we just downloaded in Excel. Even though it's not an Excel file, I trust it. So as you can see, there's a whole bunch of header information, which is important information. You're going to want to save this original file to keep it. And it tells you, we've got these 4 sites. Each one's got its own code number, and it's got a lot of different water quality parameters. We're interested in dissolved oxygen, which is number 16. And so, like I said, all this good information, but it's not what we want for importing it into R. So I'm just going to select all the stuff that we don't need, right-click delete. And really all these columns, this first column is just USGS, we know that. That's not something that we need to import, so delete that. Site number, that is something that we want to import. Date, time, it's really just date, that's something that we want to import. But all this other stuff, it's really just this last 16, all right? This is the one we care about. So I'm going to delete this. I find that, it's just good to import just what we need, and so site number, date, and dissolved oxygen level. The rest of the stuff we can just get rid of. So highlight it and then delete. All right. Now this column here next to the dissolved oxygen level, A is a code that means it's been approved, and it's not provisional or estimated, but it's actually past the USGS quality control. So what I want to do is get all those A's up here at the top. So I'm going to select everything here. Data sort by column D alphabetically. This brings the A's to the top, and remember that we just want one header row, so we're going to get rid of all these other ones. Site, it's really just date, and then this is the dissolved oxygen. All right. This column A again means approved, so I'm just going to go down and find where do the A's end. Okay, so then we get to provisional here, and let's just not do the provisional data for now. So I'm going to select all these. So in Excel, hold down Control-Shift, and I press left cursor and then down cursor. It selects all this data, and again, right-click delete. All right. There's more to do, so again, Shift Control, and then use the cursors to select this data. And there's even another one down here, so I'm going to go ahead once again and delete all this stuff so that we only have the stuff that we want to import. All right. There's one more here. Actually a lot more. Alright, there we go. Now I can just delete all this stuff. Alright, I think we're good now. Now if we go, we can see that all we have here is the data that we care about. Let's get rid of this last column. Alright. Now one more thing. Before we save this file, this date is not in the right format. You may be familiar with this format, but it's not actually the correct way to write a date. And don't take my word for it. It says right here on XKCD that there is the correct way to write a numeric date. Year first, then month, then day. And that way, chronological order is the same as numerical order. That's why you put the year first. And this is also the way that R is expecting to get the date, because R uses the correct way. So let's go ahead, and instead of using Excel's default, we'll go to more number formats. We go to custom, and and we type y, month, day. And now Excel will give it to us the right way. Right? So where should we save this file? It's ready to be saved so that it can be imported into R. And it turns out that the best way to figure out where to save it is to open up R and use a command called get working directory, abbreviated getwd. And you have to type parentheses because it's a command. And it tells you the working directory is users Chris documents. So wherever your working directory is, that's where you'd want to save a file if you want to import it. So I'm going to go save as, right? Computer, here's my documents file. I'm going to save it as a CSV just because that's what I like to work with. And I'm going to call it Russian River _do. Okay. And now it's saved, right? Yes, I definitely want to use this format. I say yes, right? It's now saved, so I can close this. I just saved it. I don't have to worry about that. And now I can go to R. And the command I'm going to use to import the data is called read.csv, since it's a CSV file. And one nice thing about R is if I ever am thinking about using a command, maybe I'm not familiar with it, I can always type help, and then in parentheses, the name of the command. I type that in, and it brings up a website. It tells me everything I need to know about read.csv. Right? There's all different kinds of arguments that you can put in here. It turns out we don't need to use all except for one of these because we have it in the default format. So I can just type, I'm going to use read.csv, but I'm going to give it a name within R. I'm going to call this data rrdo, all underscore, equals read.csv, and I have to type the name of the file first. That's the first argument. So that was rr.do.csv. The only other argument I need is this one called call classes, because I want to tell R that that second column is a date. So I type call classes equals C, that means combine everything in parentheses. The first column is a number, so we just type NA, which basically means default. If you read here, it'll give you the details, but that's just a number, so we type NA. This is the important one. The second one was the date, so we want to tell R it's a date. And then the third column is again just a number, so we can type it like that. So this is the only command I need to import that data, and we can see that it goes through. All right. And let's just say you type something wrong, rrdo. Let's say you did read.c and you misspelled it, and you typed in all this other stuff. Right? It would give you an error, and it can't find this. All right. Well. Nice thing about R and other things is you can just press the up cursor and you get all your old commands. So you could go through and, in this case I could just go to the first rrdo, type it in again just for good measure, and we get it right now. So we've got now rrdo. It's what's known as a data frame in R. If I type str, that stands for structure, it'll tell me the structure of rrdo. You can see that it's got 3,700 observations, 3 different variables, site number, date, and do. And so that's one verification that we have the right data. We could also type in a plot command. So I'm going to go help plot. If we just want to get a look at this data, you can see plot, you can just type in x comma y, and it'll just that simply give you a plot. So in this case I want to do do versus date, but it's the data frame rrdo. So I have to type rrdo. $ is what R uses to separate the name of the data frame from the individual variables inside the data frame. So rrdo date, that's my x variable. rrdo capital Do, that is my y variable. And if I type this in, you can see that I've got my data right here. So you can see that the data is there. It's over the last roughly 5 years as I expected. So this is looking pretty good. I've got the data that I need. The first thing I'm going to do is actually separate this data into the 5 different sites. And I've actually already got this in a script. So I'm going to open up my R script, do load. And you can see what I've done here is I am going to just redo the read.csv commands. Then I'm going to use this subset command. For all the times where the site number is equal to the code for Hopland, I'm going to call that Hopland. And then the same with the other 4 sites on the Russian River. And then I'm going to go ahead and plot just the Hopland date versus do and see if that works. Now the nice thing about this script is not only can I save it and open it right away, I can just click in this, Control A selects everything, and I just press Control R, and it'll execute all these commands for me. And now you can see I've got the Hopland site, and you can see this nice yearly pattern in dissolved oxygen versus the time. And now I can save this. If I'm having trouble with this script, I could save it and send it to somebody and ask for help. And even if I were to restart R, I'm not going to save the workspace image because I've got it saved in the script. Right, I can just restart R. I can just open up that script, do load, select it all, A, and then press R, and I get my plot back. And so that's really handy. You can always recreate everything you've done at a future time, even on a different computer if you're using a different computer. So it's really handy to use these R scripts, and so we'll be using those a lot. So that's all for importing this data into R. The next video I make will show you how to make different kinds of plots with R.